Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I have some rather interesting news. Now, some of you may remember a certain individual who went by the name of Carlos Maza last year. And what you may remember him for is the fact that he's a journalist from Vox who tried to get Steven Crowder deplatformed from YouTube. And all because Carlos Maza got offended at jokes made by Steven Crowder at his expense. This started what was known as the Vox Adpocalypse, which saw thousands of channels deplatformed and livelihoods ruined. And even though YouTube ruled that Steven Crowder had not violated their rules and had therefore done nothing wrong, they decided to still demonetize his own channel anyways, for presenting what they described as borderline content. So needless to say, Carlos Maza doesn't exactly have the best reputation on YouTube. In fact, in response to his actions, he was nicknamed, by yours truly no less, as the Twitter Verified Adolf Hipster, which was both a meme and nickname that took off thanks to the help of Sargon of Akkad, who ended up titling one of his videos after the meme. I bring all of this up because Carlos Maza no longer works for Vox and instead has decided to start a career here on YouTube. However, I should mention that this career is because he has no other choice, as a recent article from The Verge actually devotes an entire paragraph to allow Carlos Maza to whinge at the fact that he has actually so sullied his reputation that he is unhireable by any other journalist company. And given what this man has done and tried to do to YouTube itself, I can relate. I'm not exactly thrilled about him being here either. Of course, he also plans to rely primarily on Patreon in order to sustain himself. And more on that topic later on, but let's actually discuss the very first video he's decided to make, which is supposed to be a video describing himself and the purpose of his channel, which as far as I can tell is going to be discussing political issues, but it would be a genuine disservice of me to not mention how utterly cringeworthy this whole affair actually is. For a start, Carlos Maza has decided to create a number of strawman characters for his show, which appear to serve the same sort of purpose as the one-off strawman characters that you would find in a later Nostalgia Critic episode. And given that the purpose of these characters is to discuss very real political issues, in a very real attempt to persuade people to a particular viewpoint, that's not exactly a good start. Another issue I should mention is the fact that Carlos Maza seems to be focusing on the wrong things for that type of channel. Instead of relying on any ability he may actually have to give arguments, he seems more interested in telling you about his green screen setup, which is pretty low on the list of priorities when it comes to channels involving themselves in the discussion of politics. Most of the big YouTubers in that particular category don't even really do green screen effects at all. It's not only unnecessary, but instead actively distracts from the main point of those types of channels. But of course, I've saved the absolute top tier cringe for last. And that's the fact that Carlos Maza actually has the nerve to bring up the fact that YouTube doesn't exactly treat its content creators well, conveniently leaving out the fact that he is both complicit and directly responsible for that mistreatment and abuse. And while we're on the subject of YouTube's content policies, it turns out that Carlos Maza is actually in violation of those policies in the very first video here. For you see, in this very first video, Carlos Maza actually describes himself as an Antifa super soldier. And in addition, one of the strawman characters that he created is actually an Antifa member that is presented in a positive light. I bring this up because Antifa is a terrorist organization that has committed numerous acts of violence in the streets, which means that according to YouTube's policies against violent criminal organizations, Carlos Maza shouldn't actually be allowed to post on YouTube here. In addition, he is also in violation of the rules on Patreon for the exact same reason, as people who claim they are part of a terrorist organization are simply not allowed to use that platform either. Now, some may actually want to defend Carlos Maza here by pointing out the fact that he said he was an Antifa super soldier as a joke, which is fair enough in theory. Unfortunately, I also have to point out the fact that Steven Crowder was demonetized over jokes as well, and his demonetization was directly the result of Carlos Maza. So this is a standard that Carlos Maza actively created. So the question becomes, what do we do with this information? Do I support reporting his channel for being in violation of YouTube at this time? Do I support reporting him to Patreon for the exact same reason? And the answer for me personally is no. Now, I'm the first to admit that there would be something genuinely cathartic about watching Carlos Maza getting deplatformed and his livelihood ruined over some of the standards and policies that he himself tried to set up. So I can understand why many people would refer to it as karma, and perhaps even a few calling it justice. However, the simple reality is that I am a firm and ardent believer in free speech. And that means free speech for all, even those I absolutely detest to the very core. So yes, I do not support deplatforming Carlos Maza from YouTube at this time. And the only thing that would make me ever change my mind on this would be if Carlos Maza tried once again to deplatform others while on here. But either way, I don't exactly see his channel standing the test of time, as he has already decided to hide how badly he's getting ratioed, and even hiding the comments section temporarily as well, only reversing the latter decision when he realized that doing so was actually hurting his own views and monetary gain. So I don't exactly see Carlos Maza here as being cut out for YouTube. But nevertheless, I hope you can see why I decided to cover this particular story. Considering all of the horrible things done on YouTube in Carlos Maza's name, the fact that he's decided to start a career on here of all places is something that I simply could not ignore. And believe me when I say that his is a particular channel that I will be keeping a very close eye on in the foreseeable future. In any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.